Hi, it's Mr. Brough here. I just wanted to talk you through some information to do with Henry VIII. So first of all, if I just talk you through Henry at the start of his reign and what England's like, what Henry's like really as a person. So Henry becomes king in 1509. He's 17 years of age. His mum is dead, his dad is dead, his elder brother Arthur is dead. So this is a person who's suddenly inherited great power, but it also has had a very, very difficult and troubled life. So he becomes king in 1509, and he has no real interest in the detail of ruling England. He doesn't want to spend his time sat down going through paperwork in a methodical way, in the way that his dad, Henry VII, had. What Henry wants to do is be out, playing sports such as jousting, and he wants to spend his time, I suppose, doing the things that a lot of normal 17-year-old lads want to do. And this is therefore going to create an opportunity for someone like Thomas Wolsey or Thomas Cromwell to take on the position of the person who does all the administration, because Henry certainly doesn't want to do it himself. So what kind of country is England in 1509? Well, it's a relatively poor country. It is surrounded in some respects by enemies or potential enemies of Scotland and France. It is a country of about 2.5 million people, the vast majority of which live in the countryside. London is the main city, but even London's population of about 60,000 isn't really particularly big. And England is a very hierarchical society. There's a very, very set social structure that really dates back from the feudal system. And there is this great chain of being, the idea that there's God at the top of this chain, and then the king, and then the nobles, the dukes and the earls, and they owe their position and their privilege to God. They've been chosen by God, which is why they have this position, and this is known as divine right. And there's very little social mobility between the different layers. It's also worth noting that at the time when Henry inherited the throne, there were other members of the aristocracy who probably had as good a claim to the throne as Henry did. And so for Henry, there's always the potential for people to challenge his authority. It's always a possibility, not least because his dad himself, Henry VII, took the crown by force from Richard III. So then Henry's rule is very personal. He rules with the help of a royal council of advisors. At the same time, a lot of the important decisions will be taken by Henry and his friends, sometimes in the Privy Chamber, the King's own private chambers. So there isn't really a fixed, set way of governing England. It very much depends upon the personality of the king. And so, as I said earlier, there is a real opportunity for someone like Wolsey to come in, and if they're willing to do the thing the kings want, to actually exert quite a lot of power and influence themselves. Henry had very set views about the power of the monarchy. He believed his power derived from God, and he believed that he was sovereign, he was the sole source of power in the country, and that he should be obeyed, and that even the Catholic Church, the archbishops, the bishops, etc., they should all obey and respect his decisions, even though there is a separate church hierarchy. So Henry has this idea that he's been appointed by God, and he has this idea that he is the sovereign source of power in the country and across the whole of England. The typical question for the Henry paper is describe two features of, and it's a dead straightforward question, 4 marks, So you may get a question, describe two features of Henry's beliefs as a king, and you identify one feature, divine right, and then you give some evidence about that, and then you identify another feature, his belief in him being the sovereign, the sole source of power, and then you give some examples to support that. So it's really a very, very straightforward question.